Greetings, theists and non-theists. I'm the Atheist Paladin. I'm replying to Rational Roundtable's last video on ethics. There's a few things interesting about this video, and of course a few problems if I'm replying. But the interesting thing is that in the system that he proposes, it's not necessarily God's nature or commands that make something right. It's just something merely what God knows. He says that you can only objectively know something is good or bad only if you have the property of omniscience. So in that way, God is still required for morality in a sense, but not directly responsible for. However, in proposing this position, there are quite a few problems, such namely his idea of what objective actually is. Objectivity does not necessarily entail knowledge of all things. Point in case, science. We consider science objective because of its methodologies. Science is completely readily admits its weaknesses and the things that it does not know. So into saying, well, in order to objectively know something is good or bad, just because of omniscience, is a very misconstrued idea of objectivity. Furthermore, for his argument to work, it sort of entails that there is no libertarian sense of free will, which is a very peculiar position for a theist to take unless you're a Calvinist. Take, for example, to which he gives, which, flip-flops from being objectively good or objectively bad, because he keeps inserting more chances where somebody dies. In that he says, well, imagine you're a person, you're stopping another one from killing 3. Then your act would be objectively good. But what if the situation changes and one of those 3 goes on to kill even more people? And then it becomes objectively good, and then it flips yet again, because now the person who kills even more people turns out actually kills one of those people is actually a dictator. What he doesn't notice is that in fact he's actually justifying the deaths of innocent people with the scenario, and he completely misses that, and I disagree with that scenario wholeheartedly. Furthermore, I'll also disagree with it because nobody is culpable for what they do not know. So if the person who is stopping the person who... I know it gets confusing, but if you're stopping the person who's killing 3, who's actually killing one of those people who will kill more, you're not culpable for such actions of that people, of that person, of those people. So if that person actually goes on to kill more, he is still responsible for his own actions. That's part of why theists also like to argue free will as a part of a necessity of morality, because then there is no responsibility of one's own actions, regardless of the free will versus determinism debate I'm not going to get into. But overall, there's still a problem. So you're only being responsible for your own actions. So if you're preventing someone taking somebody else's life, which is not necessarily self-defense, then you are acting in the right manner, regardless of who actually decides to take advantage of that and goes on to live to kill another day. Still, given those situations, it's still objectively right to act in such a manner. Okay, I mentioned the free will thing and objectivity. Another thing he actually goes on to say is that that if atheists accept this position, we can no longer make the sort of genocide is bad sort of arguments against the Bible. And to that which I have to disagree, and actually say that the sword cuts both ways. If we cannot truly know whether such actions are good or bad, then us also making the statement that God is good is also a completely nonsensical statement at all. So you're saying, well, God only knows if this action is good or bad. Well, that may be the case, but you're still taking it on faith that God is also good. You cannot know. If you cannot know whether something objectively is good or bad, then you also cannot take that and apply that to God. That's just how it works. So that rather puts you in an interesting conundrum. You have to trust God that He is good and not some sort of Cartesian demon trying to fool us all. So that sums up my arguments against rational roundtables. Ethical theory. It accepts, in his argumentation, it accepts the deaths of innocent people, which are never justifiable, and it also makes very bad assumptions of what something objectively is and what it actually is when we say something is objectively good or bad. Other than that, that's it. So thank you. And remember, rationality is the path to righteousness.